October 1999 was unusually cold in Riverdale, New Jersey. Early frosts covered the withered grass with a thin silver crust in the mornings, and bare tree branches scratched the sky as if trying to grab hold of the slipping warmth. The industrial suburb of Newark was going through tough times. 3 large businesses had closed in the last 5 years, leaving behind empty buildings and rising unemployment. Ashley Morgan had just started her 2nd year at Essex County Community College. A slender brunette with expressive brown eyes and dimples, she was known for her infectious laugh and kindness. An aspiring psychologist, she always found time to listen to her friends' problems. Ashley was the light of our lives, her mother, Carol Morgan, would later say, holding back tears in front of local news cameras. She never walked past someone in need. The evening of Friday, October 22nd, began as a typical student gathering. The home of Brian Foster, Ashley's classmate, was located in the relatively affluent neighborhood of Riverdale, a half-hour walk from the Morgans' house. Music, conversation, a few bottles of beer, nothing that would set this party apart from dozens of others. It was a small gathering, 15 people, no more, recalls Jennifer Clark, Ashley's best friend. We just talked and listened to music, nothing wild. Ashley hardly drank at all. She had an early shift at the cafe the next day. Shell gas station surveillance cameras captured Ashley at 11:17 p.m. She bought a bottle of water and a bag of chips, exchanged a few words with the cashier, Michael Rodriguez, and walked out onto the street. That was the last recording of her alive. She seemed perfectly normal, Rodriguez said. She smiled and said something about it getting cold. Nothing out of the ordinary. It was about a 20-minute walk from the gas station to the Morgan family home. The usual route took her through a residential area, past an elementary school, and then through a small industrial zone, an old industrial area with the abandoned Riverdale Mills textile factory, which had closed in 1995. I offered to let her stay at my place for the night. Jennifer Clark's voice trembles even years after those events. Or at least call a taxi. But Ashley said the walk would help her sober up and clear her head before the workday. When the clock struck midnight, and then 1 o'clock in the morning, Robert Morgan, Ashley's father, began to worry. He called his daughter several times, but her phone was unavailable. Ashley always let us know if she was going to be late, recalls Robert, a tall man with premature gray hair and deep wrinkles that had cut across his face after the tragedy. She was a responsible girl. When she hadn't returned by 2 in the morning, I woke up my wife, and we started calling her friends. By morning, it was clear that something serious had happened. Ashley hadn't shown up at home or at her shift at the Morning Aroma Cafe, where she worked part-time on weekends. Her phone was still turned off. The Riverdale police were reluctant to file a missing person report. According to protocol, an adult must be missing for at least 48 hours before they are officially declared missing. However, the family insisted on an immediate investigation, pointing out that this behavior was completely out of character for Ashley. We were told that she was probably out partying with friends or her boyfriend, recalls Carol Morgan. But those who knew Ashley understood that this was impossible. She would never have deliberately caused us to worry. For the first day, the search was mainly conducted by family and friends. They called all the hospitals, posted flyers with Ashley's photo all over Riverdale, questioned neighbors, and checked the route from Brian Foster's house to the Morgans' house. We believed we would find her, says Caitlin Morgan, Ashley's younger sister, who was 15 at the time. I remember my mom saying over and over, "She'll call soon, she'll be found." We couldn't even imagine that. On the second day, the police joined the search. Detective James Connor, a veteran with 20 years of experience in the Violent Crimes Unit, led the investigation. The longer the disappearance lasts, the less chance there is of finding the person alive, Connor explained in an interview for a documentary film made on the 10th anniversary of the tragedy. But I've seen people come home after weeks of being missing. There's always hope. Search teams combed the area, paying particular attention to the industrial zone and the area around the abandoned Riverdale Mills factory. The huge brick building with broken windows and a partially collapsed roof had long been a gathering place for teenagers and homeless people, despite the fencing and no trespassing signs. We checked every nook and cranny, every basement, recalls Officer Alex Douglas, who participated in the search. There were dozens of places where a body could be hidden. The factory covered almost 3 acres, with numerous rooms and technical floors. Early in the morning on October 25th, almost 3 days after Ashley's disappearance, search team volunteer Thomas Wilson found a dark blue backpack in the bushes near the north entrance to the factory. Inside were Ashley's textbooks, her wallet with her documents and money, and her turned-off cell phone. I knew right away that this was a bad sign. Wilson, a school math teacher, shook his head as he recalled the moment. The money and phone were still there. It wasn't a robbery. News of the backpack's discovery spread instantly throughout Riverdale. The small town, with a population of just over 25,000, was plunged into an atmosphere of fear and suspicion. We all knew each other, or so we thought, says Howard Baker, then mayor of Riverdale. And suddenly we realized that there might be someone among us who had harmed this girl. The police increased their patrols on the streets. Parents stopped letting their children walk around unsupervised. Parties were canceled, college students returned home in groups. No one wanted to be alone. On the same day, the police officially reclassified the case from missing person to possible murder. The area around the factory was cordoned off, and forensic experts carefully examined every inch of the territory where the backpack was found. We were looking for traces of blood, struggle, and dragging of the body, explains forensic expert Lisa Chen. Unfortunately, the rain that fell the day before washed away many potential clues. Meanwhile, Ashley's family was going through the worst days of their lives. Their home on Maple Street became the unofficial headquarters of the search operation. Friends and neighbors brought food, offered help, and kept watch by the phone. We couldn't eat or sleep, recalls Robert Morgan. Carol was crying constantly, and I just walked around the house like a ghost, not understanding what was going on. It was like a nightmare from which it was impossible to wake up. Local news channels interrupted their regular programming for emergency broadcasts. Reporters stood with serious expressions in front of an abandoned factory, recounting the latest developments in the investigation. The Riverdale Police Department is appealing to anyone who may have seen Ashley Morgan on Friday night or Saturday morning, said NBC4 news anchor Sandra Gomez. Any information could be crucial in the search for the missing student. The news broadcast showed a photo of a smiling Ashley in her prom dress, a picture of her with her parents in front of a Christmas tree, and a video from her last birthday, where she blows out the candles on her cake. She was a normal, happy girl whose life was cut short. We ask, we beg, whoever took our daughter, Carol Morgan, her eyes red from crying, addressed the camera directly during a press conference. Please bring our girl back to us. We won't ask any questions. We just want her to come home. By the end of the week, the police had interviewed more than 100 people, everyone who had been at the party, Ashley's friends and acquaintances, her ex-boyfriends, college professors, and co-workers. They pieced together a picture of her last known hours and checked the alibis of potential suspects. Riverdale fell silent in anxious anticipation. Halloween, usually celebrated noisily in the town, passed almost unnoticed. Children did not go door to door for candy, and the traditional parade was canceled. The frightening reality overshadowed the holiday of costumed monsters. And in the Morgan house, time seemed to stand still. Ashley's room remained untouched, her bed made, an unfinished book on the nightstand, photos of friends on the wall, a teddy bear she had received from her first boyfriend. It was as if she had stepped out for a moment and was about to return. I went in there every night, Robert Morgan admits. I just sat on her bed and imagined her doing her homework at her desk, as usual. I talked to her, told her about my day. Carol thought I was going crazy. The phone at the Morgans' house rang constantly. Sometimes they were sincere offers of help, sometimes journalists eager for exclusive comments. and sometimes cruel pranksters or psychics claiming to know where Ashley was. The hardest thing was to give hope and then take it away, recalls Detective Connor. Every time we got a new lead, I saw a spark in her parents' eyes. And then, when the lead didn't pan out, that spark would fade. And so it went, over and over again. As the days turned into weeks, the intensity of the search waned. The police continued their investigation, but the search parties became smaller and smaller. Reporters moved on to other news stories, and life in the city gradually returned to normal. But not for the Morgan family. For them, an endless nightmare of uncertainty began, one that would last for many years. By early November 1999, the investigation into Ashley Morgan's disappearance had entered a new phase. The Riverdale Police Department, which usually dealt with petty theft and public order violations, found itself at the center of a case that had captured the attention of the entire state of New Jersey. Detective James Connor, a 48-year-old police veteran with silver temples and perpetually tired eyes, led the investigation. A board appeared in his office with a photo of a smiling Ashley, a map of her last known route, and a list of potential witnesses. In cases like this, the first 72 hours are critical, Connor explained later. After that, the chances of finding the victim alive dropped dramatically. We did everything we could, but time was against us. The first suspects were Ashley's friends from the party. Brian Foster, the host, was questioned repeatedly. A tall, awkward computer science student with a nervous tic, he seemed completely devastated by what had happened. "I should have insisted that she stay," he repeated during questioning. "Or at least called her a taxi. Why didn't I think of that?" Foster's alibi was confirmed by several guests. After Ashley left, the party continued for about an hour. Then only Brian's close friends remained, playing video games until morning. Cameras from neighboring houses also did not record any suspicious movements. Jennifer Clark, Ashley's best friend, went through a series of grueling interrogations. She brought old photos and letters to the police station and shared her memories, anything that could help in the search. "They asked me about her secrets, her boyfriends, her problems," Jennifer said. But Ashley had no enemies. Everyone loved her. However, the police discovered that a month before her disappearance, Ashley had broken up with her boyfriend, Scott Parker, whom she had been dating for almost a year. A 21-year-old engineering student and member of the university football team, Parker had a reputation for being quick-tempered. Scott was intense, Jennifer Clark said, choosing her words carefully. He loved Ashley very much, maybe too much. When she decided to break up with him, he couldn't accept it. He called her at night, waited for her after class, sent her flowers every day. The police quickly established that on the night of Ashley's disappearance, Scott Parker was not at the party, at his home, or at the university dormitory. His alibi, a trip to visit his parents in Philadelphia, was confirmed only by their statements. His cell phone signals were recorded in Riverdale shortly before midnight, around the time Ashley was returning home. "I loved her." Scott Parker looked exhausted as he sat in the interrogation room. "Yes, I wanted her back. Yes, I called her. But I would never have hurt her." A search of Parker's apartment revealed nothing suspicious. Nevertheless, Connor insisted on checking his car, a black 1995 Ford Mustang. Forensic experts found several long brown hairs in the trunk that resembled Ashley's hair. However, DNA analysis showed that they belonged to another woman, Scott's new girlfriend. "It was disappointing," Connor admitted. "We were so sure we had found the culprit. It was a classic scenario, a rejected boyfriend who couldn't accept the loss. But there was no evidence. Scott Parker spent 48 hours in custody before being released on his own recognizance. Local newspapers jumped at the chance to print his photo next to a smiling picture of Ashley, accompanied by headlines such as "Prime Suspect on the Loose." "It was like a witch hunt," recalled Parker's lawyer, Lawrence Greenberg. "The guy had to drop out of school. He couldn't walk down the street without being harassed." While the police continued their investigation, Ashley's family organized their own search operations. Robert Morgan took time off work, and coordinated the volunteers' efforts. Hundreds of people gathered every morning at the Morgan's house, were assigned search areas, and spread out in groups throughout the city and surrounding forests. Robert was incredibly organized, recalled Ted Wilson, one of the volunteers. He divided the city map into sectors, created a reporting system, and drew up schedules. All this time, he remained calm, although I'm sure he was torn apart inside. The search teams thoroughly searched the abandoned Riverdale Mills factory and the surrounding area. Unlike the police, the volunteers had no formal restrictions. They broke into boarded-up buildings, descended into sewer collectors, and explored abandoned elevator shafts. "We found a lot of strange things," said Mike Donovan, a former military man who led one of the search teams. "Drug dens, places where homeless people slept, even some kind of makeshift altar with animal skulls. But nothing related to Ashley." Carol Morgan organized an information campaign. Flyers with her daughter's photo were distributed throughout the state. Local businesses financed billboards on major highways. Ashley's story appeared on national missing persons programs. "Every call could be the one," Carol said. "We were on call around the clock. Every time my heart stopped. I thought, now we'll find out where she is." Most of the calls yielded nothing of value. Some reported seeing a similar girl in different parts of the country. Others put forward their own conspiracy theories. Still others offered the services of psychics, claiming they could contact Ashley's soul. "Desperation makes you grasp at straws," Robert Morgan admitted. "We met with 3 different psychics. All of their predictions turned out to be false." Meanwhile, Detective James Connor began to notice a disturbing pattern. Looking through old cases in neighboring counties, he discovered several cases of young women similar to Ashley, students or recent graduates, aged 18 to 25, who disappeared on their way home in the evening. "I was struck by the case of Rebecca Sanders," Connor said. "A 22-year-old medical college student from New Brunswick. She disappeared in October 1997. The same circumstances. She was returning home after meeting with friends, walking through an industrial area. Her body was found 3 months later in an abandoned warehouse. Another case occurred in Trenton in March 1998. 20-year-old Samantha Reeves, a waitress, disappeared after her night shift. She was never found, but her purse and jacket were discovered near an empty office building." "And then there was Michelle Garcia," Connor continued. 18 years old, a freshman at college in Newark. She disappeared in January 1999 after a student party. Her body was found in April in an abandoned depot. Putting the details together, Connor felt they were connected. The geographical proximity of the cities, the similar ages and appearances of the victims, the circumstances of their disappearances, everything pointed to the possibility of a serial killer. "The problem was jurisdiction," he explained. "Each case was investigated by a separate police department, and no one saw the big picture. When I started calling my colleagues, many were skeptical. 2 weeks after Ashley's disappearance, Connor organized an interagency meeting. Detectives from 5 cities gathered at the Riverdale Police Department, along with an FBI representative specializing in serial crimes. FBI agent Rachel Montgomery conducted an analysis and presented a profile of the possible perpetrator. "We are looking for a white male, aged 30 to 45, socially adjusted, possibly married, with a good job. He has access to transportation for moving bodies. He carefully selects his victims and plans his crimes in advance." She also noted that all of the girls were active in community life, participated in volunteer programs, and had a wide circle of friends. "He may meet his victims long before the attack," she suggested. "He may make contact under a plausible pretext, studying their habits and routes." Despite convincing arguments, it was not possible to officially link the cases. There was no direct evidence pointing to a single perpetrator. The methods of murder varied, as did the time between disappearance and discovery of the bodies. In addition, Ashley's body had still not been found. "The bosses demanded results on the Ashley case," Connor recalled. "The alien cases were just theory to them. I was ordered to focus on local suspects. With no progress being made, tension was mounting in Riverdale. Some accused the police of incompetence, while others spread rumors about the alleged killers. Anonymous threats were received by Scott Parker, the parents of some of Ashley's friends, and even strangers who happened to come under suspicion by their neighbors. Fear breeds mistrust, and mistrust destroys community, said Michael Burns, the local church pastor. Our small town, where everyone knew each other, suddenly turned into a place where anyone could be a monster. By the end of November, the intensity of the search had decreased. There were fewer volunteers, the search area was expanding, but the results remained zero. The worst thing is the uncertainty, said Carol Morgan. When a body is found, you can begin the process of acceptance. But when a person just disappears, part of you is always waiting, always hoping that the door will open and she will walk in. Despite the pressure, Connor continued to investigate the connection between the disappearances. He created a map with the locations of the disappearances marked, compiled a timeline, and studied the routes between cities. Analyzing social connections, he discovered that 3 of the missing girls, including Ashley, had participated in an intercollegiate volunteer program to help the elderly. The program covered several cities and was coordinated by the Silver Age Foundation. I took a list of the foundation's employees and volunteers, Connor said. More than 300 names. I started checking their alibis, looking for people who could have been in each of the cities at the right time. The work progressed slowly. Many of the volunteers were students who changed addresses frequently. The documentation was sloppy. In addition, years had passed since some of the disappearances, and it was impossible to verify where a person had been on a specific day. By December 1999, Ashley's case was officially still open, but active investigation had effectively ceased. The police moved on to other crimes, assigning only one officer to work with incoming information, James Connor. I couldn't let this case go, he admitted. Every time I saw Robert and Carol Morgan, their lost eyes, I felt like a traitor. I promised to find their daughter, but I couldn't keep my promise. The Morgans spent Christmas 1999 in silence and mourning. A single candle burned on the porch of their house, a symbol of hope for the return of their missing daughter. Similar candles were lit in the windows of many houses in Riverdale, silent testimony that the city remembers and waits. Ashley Morgan became a ghost, a story used to scare teenagers. Her photo remained on the bulletin board at the supermarket, at the police station, in the college lobby. But finding her seemed impossible. Only Detective Connor continued to believe that one day the truth would come out. And it did come out, but only many years later, when almost everyone had given up waiting. The year 2000 arrived. The millennium that everyone had been waiting for brought the world hope for a better future. But for the Morgan family, time seemed to stand still. The January snowstorms swept away the traces, the spring rains washed away the last clues, and the summer burned the grass on the vacant lots where Ashley had once been searched for. Life went on for everyone, except those who waited for her return. A depressing routine settled in the Morgan household. Robert returned to work at the insurance company, but became withdrawn and uncommunicative. Carol spent most of her days at the window, flinching at every phone call. Their youngest daughter, Caitlin, now 16, tried to be strong for her parents, but often woke up at night from nightmares. Our life is divided into before and after, Carol Morgan said in an interview with a local newspaper on the first anniversary of her daughter's disappearance. We've learned to smile, go to work, talk to our neighbors. But inside, a clock is constantly ticking, counting the time without Ashley. In October 2000, exactly 1 year after Ashley's disappearance, more than 200 people gathered in Riverdale City Park. They held candles, wore badges with a photo of the smiling girl, and shared memories. Carol cried, Robert stood with a stony face, and Caitlin read a poem she had written for her sister. A year later, about 50 people attended the same memorial gathering. By the 5th anniversary, there were no more than 20 left, mostly family and close friends. the city was gradually returning to normal life. People can't live in fear and grief forever, explained psychologist David Greenspoon, who worked with families of violent crime victims. Forgetting is a natural defense mechanism, but for the loved ones of the missing person, time stands still. They exist in limbo, unable to mourn their loss or move on. Detective James Conner was a rare exception to the rule. Even after most of his colleagues had mentally closed the case, he continued to work on it. Every week, he reviewed the investigation materials, checked new reports of missing persons, and looked for similar cases. James became almost like a member of our family, recalls Robert Morgan. He would come to our house just to talk. Sometimes he brought news about the case, but more often he just drank tea with us and listened to our stories about Ashley. In 2003, when a maniac operating in a neighboring state was arrested, Conner personally went to the interrogations, trying to find out if he was involved in Ashley's disappearance. Again and again, he returned to his theory about a serial killer operating in different cities in New Jersey. This case became an obsession for Conner, says the detective's former colleague, Officer Michael Donahue. He kept photos of all the missing girls in his office. In the last few years before his retirement, he devoted almost all of his working time to these old cases, which did not please his superiors. In 2007, James Conner retired. He was 56 years old, with 30 years of service behind him, but the main case of his life remained unsolved. At his farewell party at the police station, Conner announced to his colleagues that he was not going to give up. "I'll keep at it until I find out the truth," he said, raising his glass. "Now I have even more time to investigate." Conner kept his word. He set up a makeshift office in his garage where he hung maps, photographs, and notes. He corresponded with detectives from other cities, tracked news about unsolved crimes, and studied databases that had become available on the internet. Meanwhile, the life of Caitlin Morgan, Ashley's younger sister, went on as usual. She graduated from high school, then college, with a degree in criminology. All these years, she was haunted by the thought that somewhere nearby, there might be a person involved in her sister's disappearance. "I saw how powerless the police were in such cases," says Caitlin, a petite girl with a determined look, so similar to her missing sister. "How quickly interest is lost, how easily a criminal can escape responsibility. And I decided that I had to change the system from within." In 2010, at the age of 26, Caitlin Morgan enrolled in the New Jersey Police Academy. Her parents were against it. They were afraid of losing their second daughter, afraid of the dangers she would face. But Caitlin was adamant. "I did it not only for Ashley," she explains, "but also for myself, for the feeling that I am not just a victim of circumstances, that I can make a difference." Caitlin graduated from the academy with honors and began working as a patrol officer in Newark. She hoped to eventually transfer to the Violent Crimes Unit, where she could use her knowledge and experience to solve cases similar to her sister's disappearance. Meanwhile, Robert and Carol Morgan tried to move on with their lives, although grief had changed them forever. Carol, once a sociable and energetic woman, became painfully anxious. She spent hours browsing news sites, reading crime reports, and subscribing to newspapers from neighboring cities. Every mention of remains being found sent her into a panic. Carol lives in constant fear of finding out the truth, and at the same time, in fear of never finding out, says Dr. Elizabeth Hart, a psychotherapist who worked with the family. This is typical for parents of missing children. They cannot complete the grieving process without a body, without specific knowledge about the fate of their child. Robert Morgan coped with his grief differently. He immersed himself in work, took on overtime, and devoted his free time to volunteering with Hope for the Missing, an organization that helps families of missing persons. He gave practical advice, helped organize search operations, and raised funds for private investigators. "By helping others, I feel like I'm doing something useful," Robert explained in an interview. "That the experience I gained at such a terrible cost is not wasted." In 2012, when Robert turned 50, he had a heart attack. Doctors attributed it to years of stress and sleep deprivation. 3 weeks in the hospital forced him to reevaluate his approach to life. I realized that if I died trying to find Ashley, it would be a meaningless sacrifice, he says. Carol needs me. Caitlin needs me. I have to live for them. After his recovery, Robert reduced his working hours and spent more time at home. He and Carol began attending a support group for parents of missing children, which helped them express their feelings and realize that they were not alone in their grief. In 2014, on the 15th anniversary of Ashley's disappearance, a local television station made a short documentary about the case. The filmmakers interviewed Ashley's family, friends, former classmates, and Detective Connor. The film sparked a new wave of interest in the story, albeit a short-lived one. Every time the case is in the news again, we get dozens of calls, Connor said. Most of them lead to nothing, but sometimes interesting details emerge. Someone remembers seeing a suspicious car. Someone recognizes a person in a photograph. Someone simply notices a strange coincidence. By this time, Connor had been retired for 7 years, but his passion for investigation had not faded. He started a blog where he posted information about the case, with the family's consent, of course, communicated with amateur criminologists, and discussed theories and versions. The virtual community interested in solving the Ashley Morgan case grew. The internet has changed the approach to such investigations, Connor explains. Now we have access to information that we could only dream of before. Crime databases, geolocation, social networks that allow us to track people's movements. Sometimes I think that if these tools had existed in 1999, we would have found Ashley by now. In 2015, Caitlin Morgan transferred to the Newark Police Department's Violent Crimes Unit. Her first serious case was the disappearance of a 19-year-old student under circumstances eerily reminiscent of Ashley's case. Fortunately, the girl was found alive 3 days later. She had been the victim of a robbery, but had managed to escape from her attacker. When we found her, dirty, scared, but alive, I cried like a baby, Caitlin admits. It was cathartic. It was as if some of the pain I had been carrying with me for years had finally found a way out. Her success in this case brought Caitlin fame within the department. She began to be involved in the investigation of other disappearances, valued for her unique perspective on the problem, not only as a detective, but also as someone who had personally experienced a similar tragedy. By 2017, 18 years after Ashley's disappearance, her case was officially considered cold, but not closed. The Riverdale police station had new management, and many of the officers who had participated in the initial investigation were no longer working there. The new generation of police officers knew about Ashley Morgan only from the archives and stories of their senior colleagues. The annual memorial gathering on the anniversary of her disappearance now attracted no more than 10 people. Her parents, Caitlin, Jennifer Clark, James Connor, and a few family friends. They brought flowers to Ashley's tree, a maple planted in the city park in her memory, lit candles and read poems. The worst thing is that life goes on, says Jennifer Clark, who still keeps in touch with the Morgan family. People forget. For them, Ashley has become just a story, an urban legend. Oh, that's the girl who disappeared many years ago? They talk about her as if she was never real, never alive. However, despite years without answers, the Morgan family did not lose hope. Robert and Carol, now elderly people with gray hair and wrinkles etched across their faces, still kept Ashley's room untouched. Caitlin, now an experienced detective, spent her free time reviewing her sister's case files. James Connor, despite his age and health problems, continued his independent search. 18 years is a long time, Connor muses, sorting through the yellowed documents in his home archive. People change, forget, die, but the truth doesn't go anywhere. It waits for us to find it. In the spring of 2017, when the old industrial areas of Riverdale began to be redeveloped into modern residential complexes, the city council decided to demolish the abandoned Riverdale Mills factory. The building, which had stood abandoned for more than 20 years, had become a symbol of decline and, at the same time, a symbol of the tragedy that had befallen Ashley Morgan. When I heard about the demolition plans, I had a strange feeling, Connor recalls. It was as if we were missing our last chance to find answers. This building had kept secrets for almost 2 decades. What if one of those secrets was the secret of Ashley's disappearance? The demolition was scheduled for July 2017. A month before that, during the preparatory work, a team of builders began clearing the surrounding area. The bushes were cut down, the trash was removed, and the foundation was inspected. No one could have imagined that this routine activity would lead to a shocking discovery that would turn the entire investigation upside down. June 2018 was unusually hot and dry in Riverdale. The construction company New Jersey Development was actively working to transform the old industrial area into a modern residential complex. The abandoned Riverdale Mills textile factory was to give way to fashionable apartments and a shopping center. A symbol of the past was being replaced by a sign of a new era. This project should breathe life into a dying area, Riverdale Mayor Michael Collins said at a press conference. But we remember the history of this place and will do everything we can to preserve the memory of the past. The new complex will feature a memorial garden named after Ashley Morgan and others who went missing. The mayor's words were met with applause, but some residents saw the demolition of the factory as the loss of the last thread connecting them to the tragedy of almost 20 years ago. Among them was former Detective James Connor, now a 70-year-old retiree with a heart condition and an unquenchable thirst for justice. I came to the construction site every day, Connor recalls. I sat in my car and watched. The workers already knew me by sight and sometimes came over to talk. They understood why this place was so important. The morning of June 17th began as usual. A team of builders led by foreman Tony Martinez was preparing to dismantle the concrete slabs in the north wing of the building. An excavator removed a layer of soil near the foundation, exposing old brickwork. "Something was wrong with that wall," says Martinez, a burly man with a weather-beaten face. The bricks looked newer than in other parts of the building, and the masonry was different. I've been in construction for 30 years. I have an eye for these things. Martinez stopped the work and called an engineer for consultation. Together, they decided to make a small hole in the suspicious wall to see what was behind it. What they found shocked even these seasoned builders. Behind the wall was a windowless room measuring approximately 3 by 4 meters, with a concrete floor and low ceiling. In the corner stood a metal cot, next to it an old table. But the most shocking thing was the contents of a built-in closet. Bags, backpacks, clothes, jewelry, photographs, personal belongings that belonged to different people. I immediately thought of the missing girls, Martinez says. Everyone in town knew the story. I called the police without touching anything inside. 20 minutes later, the police arrived. Detective Lucas Rodriguez, recently appointed head of the Violent Crimes Unit, immediately cordoned off the area and called in the forensic team. We realized we had discovered something significant, recalls Rodriguez. The basement wasn't marked on any of the building's blueprints. Someone had deliberately bricked it up, creating a false wall. It couldn't have been an accident. News of the discovery spread through Riverdale like wildfire. By evening, a crowd of journalists and onlookers had gathered at the construction site fence. Among them were Robert and Carol Morgan, still hoping to learn the fate of their daughter. I saw their faces, a mixture of hope and fear, says Rodriguez. In all my years on the police force, nothing has weighed on me as much as the need to tell them the news, whether good or bad. Forensic scientists worked in the basement for 2 days, carefully recording and collecting evidence. Each item was photographed, packaged, and sent to the lab. In total, more than 100 pieces of physical evidence were collected. Among the items found, we identified Ashley Morgan's backpack and wallet, Riverdale Police Chief Greg Thompson said at a press conference. In addition, personal items were found that are believed to have belonged to Rebecca Sanders, who disappeared in New Brunswick in 1997, and Michelle Garcia of Newark, who disappeared in January 1999. The news that the items found could have belonged to several missing girls confirmed Detective Connor's long-standing theory about a serial killer operating in various cities in New Jersey. "I didn't feel satisfaction at having my suspicions confirmed," Connor says. "Only deep sadness at the realization that we had been right all along, and at the same time, hope that we would now be able to find the culprit." The Riverdale Police Department set up a special task force to investigate. They were joined by detectives from New Brunswick, Newark, and Trenton, as well as FBI agents specializing in serial crimes. One of the key members of the team was Caitlin Morgan, Ashley's sister, now an experienced detective from Newark. "Working on my sister's case was emotionally difficult," Caitlin admits. "But I knew I had to be involved. For Ashley's sake, for the sake of the other girls, for the sake of justice." Modern technology has opened up possibilities for investigators that were not available 20 years ago. Advanced DNA analysis has made it possible to extract genetic samples even from items that have been stored for a long time. "We were able to extract the DNA of a potential perpetrator from several items," explains Dr. Samantha Choi, the forensic expert who led the laboratory part of the investigation. "First of all, from the rope that was presumably used to tie up the victims and from the metal handcuffs found under the bunk bed. The genetic profile was uploaded to the National DNA database, but no matches were found. The perpetrator was not in the system. Perhaps he had never been prosecuted for serious crimes. This made our investigation difficult, but not hopeless," says FBI agent Daniel Morrison, who advised the local police. "We had other leads. Among the items found in the basement were photographs, not only personal photos of the missing girls, but also photos from various public events, charity events, student festivals, volunteer projects." Detective Rodriguez and his team began to carefully study these photos, trying to find common elements. It was Caitlin Morgan who first noticed a key detail. "I was looking through photos from a charity marathon that Ashley participated in," she says. "And suddenly I saw a familiar face in the crowd. The same man appeared in a photo from a university fair where Rebecca Sanders was present, and in a photo from Michelle Garcia's volunteer project. All of these photos featured the same middle-aged man, tall, fit, with a neat haircut and a friendly smile. He stood in the background, not drawing attention to himself, but he was always in close proximity to the girls who later disappeared. We began systematically reviewing all available photos from events attended by the missing girls," Rodriguez explains. "This man appeared again and again, not in all the photos, but often enough to rule out coincidence. Using facial recognition software, investigators analyzed hundreds of photos from social media, university yearbooks, local newspapers, and charity archives. They compiled a chronology of the suspect's appearances at various events, creating a map of his movements. His participation in the Silver Age program was particularly interesting," says Agent Morrison. "This charity coordinated volunteer assistance to the elderly, and 3 of the missing girls, including Ashley Morgan, were volunteers in this program." The next step was to identify the mysterious man. His photos were shown to former employees and volunteers of the Silver Age Foundation. Several people recognized him as Dr. Richard Weinstein, a respected physician who had supported various charitable initiatives in the region for many years. Dr. Weinstein was known for his philanthropic activities, Morrison explains. He donated significant amounts to educational programs, participated in medical missions abroad, and organized charity events for young people. By 2018, Dr. Weinstein was 66 years old. He was the chief physician at Riverdale City Hospital, was married, had adult children, and had an impeccable reputation in the community. His position made him virtually untouchable, says Rodriguez. But our job is to follow the evidence, regardless of the status of a potential suspect. After studying Weinstein's biography, investigators discovered that before coming to Riverdale Hospital in 1996, he had worked in medical facilities in New Brunswick, Newark, and Trenton, the very cities where the girls had disappeared. The picture began to come together, recalls Caitlin Morgan. The places, the time, the opportunity, but we needed irrefutable evidence linking him to the basement that had been found. July 15, 2018, was a cloudy day in Riverdale. Heavy leaden clouds hung over the city, as if heralding a storm that was about to break, not only in the sky, but also in the life of the community. At 6 in the morning, 3 unmarked police cars pulled up in front of an elegant mansion in a prestigious neighborhood. Detective Lucas Rodriguez, along with FBI agents, climbed the steps and rang the doorbell. "I remember the look on Dr. Weinstein's face when he opened the door," Rodriguez says. "He was completely calm, as if he had been expecting us all these years. He didn't even ask what was going on. He just nodded and said, 'Give me a minute to say goodbye to my wife.'" Richard Weinstein was arrested on suspicion of kidnapping and murdering several young women. The news of the arrest of a respected doctor, philanthropist, and public figure had the effect of a bombshell. The police station's phone lines were flooded with calls from journalists across the country. Social media was overflowing with discussions, theories, and shocked comments from Riverdale residents. "It's impossible," said Helen Parker, a nurse who had worked with Weinstein for 15 years. Richard saved lives. He donated money to children's homes. He organized Christmas celebrations for low-income families. How could he? Many expressed similar disbelief. Dr. Weinstein was a symbol of compassion and professionalism, a model citizen and family man. His arrest forced people to rethink everything they knew about human nature. While Riverdale was in shock, the investigation team continued its work. Weinstein's house was thoroughly searched. A collection of personal items belonging to the missing girls was found in a secret safe in his office. Jewelry, hair clips, student ID cards. These items, like trophies, were stored in neat boxes with dates and initials. "That broke the dam," recalls FBI agent Daniel Morrison. "The DNA found on these items matched the samples from the factory basement. We finally had irrefutable evidence." Caitlin Morgan, who was present during the search, found a silver bracelet she had given her sister for her 18th birthday. It was the most difficult moment of her professional career. "I was holding proof that my sister would never come back," she says, struggling to contain her emotions. "But at the same time, I felt a strange sense of relief." Uncertainty is often worse than the bitter truth. The first court hearing in the Richard Weinstein case took place on August 20, 2018. The courthouse was surrounded by crowds of journalists and onlookers. People wanted to see the man whose double life had shocked not only Riverdale, but the entire country. In the courtroom, Weinstein looked nothing like he did at charity events and in official photographs. Pale, gaunt, and dressed in a standard orange prison jumpsuit, he seemed like a shadow of the charismatic leader everyone knew. However, his eyes remained as cold and calculating as ever. "He didn't say a word during the first hearing," recalls District Attorney Janet Brooks. "He just sat motionless, occasionally whispering something to his lawyer. He showed no remorse, no fear, not even curiosity." Weinstein was charged with the kidnapping and murder of 4 girls: Rebecca Sanders, Samantha Reeves, Michelle Garcia, and Ashley Morgan. The investigation suggested that there could have been more victims, but so far there was only sufficient evidence for these 4 cases. The Morgan family attended all the court hearings. Robert, now a gray-haired man with deep wrinkles, held Carol's hand, who seemed to have withered away from grief over the years. They didn't miss a word, trying to finally understand what had happened to their daughter. The investigation revealed shocking details. Weinstein used his position and charitable activities to track down potential victims. He deliberately chose young women who participated in volunteer programs, especially the Silver Age Project, where he himself was one of the main sponsors. "He chose altruists," explains psychologist Elizabeth Ramirez, who compiled the criminal's psychological profile. "Girls who were willing to help others. That was his selection criterion: kindness. Perhaps in his twisted mind, he was punishing them for this very trait." Testimony from Weinstein's former colleagues revealed his unusual behavior on the days the girls disappeared. He would suddenly cancel meetings, take time off, become irritable, or, conversely, unusually enthusiastic. We now understand that these were periods of hunting and subsequent detention of his victims, says Detective Rodriguez. After each abduction, he would spend several days in the factory basement and then return to his normal life as if nothing had happened. The most difficult part of the trial was the testimony of Mark Wilson, a former employee of the Riverdale Mills factory. In 1997, he helped Weinstein build a false wall to hide the basement, unaware of the room's true purpose. The doctor said he needed a place to store medical equipment and drugs that couldn't be kept in the hospital due to bureaucratic restrictions, Wilson said, without looking up. He paid well and asked me not to tell anyone. I never thought I couldn't imagine. Weinstein's ex-wife, Catherine, filed for divorce immediately after his arrest. In court, she admitted that she had sometimes noticed strange behavior in her husband, but attributed it to professional fatigue and stress. He often left at night, supposedly to see patients, she recalled. Sometimes he would come back with bloodstains on his clothes, explaining that he had performed emergency surgeries. I believed him. God, how could I have been so blind? As the trial progressed, it became clear that Weinstein had methodically planned his crimes. He chose his victims in advance, studying their habits, routes, and schedules. Then he waited for the right moment, when a girl was alone in a deserted place, usually late at night. He used his medical training, explains Prosecutor Brooks. He injected his victims with a fast-acting sedative, then transported them to a prepared basement. He kept them there for several days, sometimes weeks, before killing them. On November 5, 2018, Richard Weinstein unexpectedly changed his testimony. Instead of his previous tactic of complete denial, he pleaded guilty to all charges. According to his lawyer, this decision was dictated by his desire to avoid the death penalty. In his closing statement, Weinstein showed emotion for the first time. His voice trembled as he addressed the victims' families. I took away what was most precious to you. I understand that no punishment will bring your daughters back. I am not asking for forgiveness because I know I do not deserve it. I just want you to know that they fought. Each of them fought to the end. These words caused sobs in the courtroom. For the victims' families, they were both a knife in the heart and a strange consolation, confirmation that their daughters did not give up without a fight. The court sentenced Richard Weinstein to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. In addition, he was required to tell investigators the location of the victims' remains. In December 2018, on a frosty day, a snow-covered forest 30 kilometers from Riverdale became the setting for the final chapter of this tragic story. Following Weinstein's instructions, the police discovered the graves of all 4 girls. We were finally able to bring Ashley home, says Robert Morgan. For 19 years, we lived in limbo between hope and despair. Now we can mourn her and say goodbye. Ashley Morgan's funeral took place on December 21, 2018. Despite the cold, hundreds of people came to see her off on her final journey. Family, friends, former classmates, and residents of Riverdale. Many of them had never met Ashley in person, but her story had become part of their own lives. Detective James Connor, despite his advanced age and poor health, insisted on attending the funeral. Leaning on his cane, he approached the grave and placed a rose on it. I promised to find her, he said quietly. And I kept my promise. Rest in peace, Ashley. For Riverdale, Weinstein's exposure was a collective trauma. The town, known for its strong community ties and traditions of mutual aid, suddenly realized that a monster had been living among them for decades, enjoying universal respect and trust. It forced us to rethink everything we believed in, says current Riverdale Mayor James Peterson. We thought we knew each other, that we could tell a good person from a bad one. We were wrong. After the case was closed, Caitlin Morgan took a long vacation. Solving the mystery of her sister's disappearance brought her professional recognition, but the emotional toll was too high. I always thought that finding answers would mean finding peace, she reflects. But now I realize that this is only the beginning of a new journey, a journey in which we will have to learn to live with the truth, no matter how bitter it may be. In 2019, a memorial park named after the victims of Richard Weinstein was opened on the site of the demolished Riverdale Mills factory. In the center of the park, a sculpture of 4 girls holding hands was installed, a symbol of unity in tragedy and memory that will never fade.